Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
We would like to thank Woodbine for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Woodbine's 2023 Thoroughbred Stakes program has more than $17 million in purses, including 39 graded stakes, 5 Grade 1 events, and 2 $1 million classics, the King's Plate and the Woodbine Mile. Woodbine, now through December, great racing north of the border. Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America. I have to change my background during the next commercial. Racing Across America on a Sunday morning. Seth Merrow in the studio. Do a little recap of some of the Saturday action coming up. We'll also be joined in a few minutes by Tony Calo, our usual Sunday visit with Tony, taking a look at some of the early week action at Finger Lakes. But this early week includes Memorial Day tomorrow. I'll be in tomorrow afternoon because we have really nice racing with OTV Live tomorrow afternoon as well as this afternoon. But nice racing in New York tomorrow on a Monday and nice racing out in Southern California. They have 3 Grade 1s tomorrow out at Santa Anita. So a little bit later on, we'll be joined by John White. We'll talk about those Grade 1s out at Santa Anita coming up as well. So that's all this morning. Let's jump right into it because we have a full show and do some of the stakes recaps. We'll start out Belmont yesterday. The feature race was the Soaring Softly Grade 3 event for the 3-year-old fillies sprinting on the grass, scratch-reduced field of 5. American Apple, second choice at 2-1, led them most of the way around and looked pretty good coming into the stretch. American Apple is going to be the number 3 horse. Lady Beth was the favorite. Chad Brown runner coming off of a career debut win, albeit on the synthetic down at Gulfstream. So Lady Beth, the number 1 horse, as we watch the replay, is the favorite in the field of 5. And again, Queen Picasso, the eventual winner, is the 4 horse. Both Queen Picasso and Lady Beth coming off debut wins. So they both had to, it's tough to step it up and move into stakes company. But if you're going to do it, a field of 5 like this without really much stakes level competition, albeit American Apple, who had won the Matron last year at 47-1, was coming in off a stakes placing down at Churchill prior. And again, that is American Apple out there kind of taking them away. And they were running faster than this yesterday. It's just a recording on the race. But American Apple, as I say, looked pretty good. You can see just sitting outside is Queen Picasso, the daughter of Kingman for Christophe Clement. Jose Ortiz was on board, and Jose Ortiz had a nice day yesterday, including this stakes win. And you'll see in the stretch, it will wind up to be Queen Picasso kind of floating on by American Apple and getting it done pretty easily. The chart margin is going to wind up to be a couple of lengths in here for Queen Picasso. And again, it was only a field of 5. It was, the spot. If you're going to step out of maiden company and step into stakes company, this is a pretty good place to do it. But that said, nice 2-length victory in the end. $7.70 for the win, as this one went off as the 3rd choice at 5-2. American Apple 2-1 was the 2nd choice. And again, Lady Beth running 3rd. And gets up there close. Lady Beth, I will say, makes a nice little run and does make it close for 2nd. But again, a couple of lengths, the chart margin for Queen Apple. And I would think Christophe Clement and company now feel pretty good. A nice little 3-year-old filly on the turf for them in Queen Apple. All right, that's the stakes action in New York. Stakes action over at Monmouth yesterday was the cliffhanger. 1 1/16 on the grass for $100,000. The favorite was Smokin' Tea. And I'm just looking. I don't think on the morning line, Big Everest was the 8-5 favorite. 2-1 Public Sector was Chad Brown and Klarovich. And it was interesting. Ellis Starr and I yesterday talked about this race, and we were both looking at Public Sector and thinking, Chad and Klarovich likely to take some money, and did at 7-2. But if you're going to take a shot against one of their horses, this was one maybe to do it. Hadn't won in 6 starts last year. This was the seasonal debut for number 6 Public Sector, and sure enough, that one winds up running 5th. The winner winds up being Big Everest at 3-1. Again, the 8-5 morning line favorite, but floated up to 3-1. You got a nice price there, $8.60 on Big Everest in the cliffhanger. Smoking Tea, the even money favorite, wound up 3rd, and James Aloysius Smoking Tea wound up 2nd, and James Aloysius wound up 3rd in there. Big Everest, Christophe Clement runner. So Clement takes the stakes action in New York and in New Jersey. So a nice afternoon for Mr. Clement and team getting it done. And as I say, it was a decent price. Dean Reeves owned and company owns Big Everest. So nice performance there. And a couple of horses being Clement horses, you would have to think possibility that both of those winners that we just saw will be showing up right here, right up the Northway this summer and in Saratoga. I don't think that is out of the question at all. All right, and let's look at the feature race yesterday at Churchill, the Cartana. Ellis Starr and I both landed on Miss Yearwood at 6-1, and we were both kind of salivating and thinking, coming off of that allowance win previously at Keeneland, she was very good, and the betting public thought so as well. 6-1 on the morning line, goes off as the $1.99 to the dollar favorite. Miss Yearwood is the number 5 horse, and when she finally gets free, she opens up the chart margin, will wind up to be a length. Lovely Princess 2nd, Sparkle Blue 3rd. Talbea, who I thought was an interesting long shot, just gets the photo at 14-1 to complete the superfecta. Nice little late run from Talbea, again at 14-1. No threat to the winner, but again, did complete the superfecta. So our 4 had the winner on top, and our other 3 juggled up for the superfecta underneath, which for a dime, you got 500. For a dime, you got 54. For a buck, you got 540 on that super. Exacta was okay. 30, almost $35. But again, the winner was maybe a little bit disappointing at $5.98. You know, you tripled your money, but 6-1 on the morning line looked more attractive. And as I say, Ellis Starr and I liked it. And then as I was watching some of the simulcast signal and whatnot, others were talking about that one as well. So everybody kind of saw what we saw, and the horse ran to it. Miss Yearwood, a nice winner down there in the Cartana at Churchill yesterday. All right, I'm going to give the play of the day. We also have a couple of replays yesterday from Santa Anita, but maybe we'll save those for a little bit later on because I have the play of the day. We do want to get to Tony Calo in just a few, but I have the Dark Horse play of the day. Dark Horse play of the day is brought to you by the Dark Horse Mercantile Broadway in Saratoga. We appreciate their sponsorship, and I always tout if you're up in Saratoga and this time of year with the nice weather, really nice. Saratoga is one of those traditional main streets, and you can go walk up and down Broadway and stop in the shops and have a great afternoon, catch some lunch. There's great places or dinner, great places to eat right there on Broadway or very nearby. But the Dark Horse Mercantile, great place to go in and browse. I guarantee you will not be sorry, and go down the street to their sister shop, Impressions of Saratoga, and browse through there as well. A lot of fun. But the Dark Horse play of the day today, I got to get on the a part of the trouble is I'm taking shots at, like, you know, Derby Day, you want to play the Derby, and Preakness Day, you want to play the Preakness, and the Dark Horse play of the day is here throughout the Triple Crown season. So I've been taking some shots in some bigger races, and we've got 1 or 2 that have run okay for, you know, made some money. But so far, yesterday's, I thought I was right on it. We had a horse that was up there and running great until the top of the stretch. And even at the top of the stretch, I thought, she's going to gut it out here. This is going to be okay. And then the horses went by, and my pick kind of threw out the anchor late. But we'll see what we can do in today's 5th race at Churchill for our Dark Horse play of the day. We're going to go with the number 6 horse, Uncorked. The 5th at Churchill today is a maiden special, 6.5 furlongs. Experience does count, and I like in these races often to look for first-time starters with maybe a little bit of breeding and some connections. And the 7 and the 8 both come under that category with an Asmussen firster and a Brad Cox firster, the 7 and the 8. But I'm going to go with the 6. Jonathan Wong, third-time starter, who hasn't been seen in a couple of years. This is a 4-year-old who showed a little promise in the debut. They were ambitious enough to try this one in a stake at Golden Gate in the debut back in November of 2021. Ran an okay second, then came down to Santa Anita and tried maiden specials on the turf going a mile and didn't run as well and has been off since. Comes back today off obviously a long layoff, but I found it very notable that they popped in a bullet work for this. We're getting 10-1 on the morning line. I think this horse is very intriguing today on the return with that bullet workout, and Jonathan Wong now making a little noise east of the Mississippi. So our dark horse play of the day for today, Churchill, race number 5, horse number 6, Uncorked. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Tony Calo. We'll do a little Finger Lakes preview for the early part of the week, and we'll also have a Monday preview for Santa Anita Grade 1 action coming up a little bit later on, as we'll be joined by John White. So all of that right after this. Stay tuned. It only takes one upset to make history, and now you can be part of Saratoga's long tradition at the Dark Horse Mercantile. The Dark Horse Mercantile offers a carefully curated selection of clothing, gifts, and home decor, from one-of-a-kind vintage racing memorabilia to select brands like Barber and Under Armour, as well as exclusive Dark Horse branded merchandise. So celebrate the Dark Horse in all of us at the Dark Horse Mercantile, downtown Saratoga, where the smart bet is always the Dark Horse. Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now. Welcome back to Racing Across America. Seth Merrow in the studio. Thanks for joining us. And as mentioned before the break, it's our regular visit from Tony Calo to talk a little early week action at the Finger Lakes, upstate New York. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Seth.
And when I got you on the phone, you said good morning and beautiful day. And I said to you, it's been a beautiful week, certainly here in the Saratoga area. I've been getting home from doing the TV in the afternoon and going over to the state park and taking a little walk in the park. It's late, so you can get a walk after 7 o'clock and get a little exercise, but the weather's been great, but it sounds like it's been nice out in the Finger Lakes area as well.
Absolutely beautiful. I went for a walk myself the other day. And like you said, it gets dark pretty late. We can get our walks in late if we'd like. And absolutely beautiful. Hey, it's about time. Memorial Day weekend. I think we've earned it here in New York. No question about that.
Yeah, and certainly folks have the day off tomorrow and they want to drive out. easy drive out to the Finger Lakes if you want to make that trip tomorrow. We're going to talk about a little stakes action on the card tomorrow out at the Finger Lakes, so that should be fun and easy. Pull off the throughway, and you're pretty close. So if you'll keep that in mind, if you're looking for something to do,
We have a lot of nice things going tomorrow. We're giving away T-shirts. Our first 500
nice.
fans. You have to be part of our Lucky North Club, but right when you enter the casino to the right is the Lucky North Club. Real quick to get signed up. Venture on upstairs to the T-shirt table. First 500 fans are getting T-shirts. We're going to have a chicken barbecue. We've got one of the local food vendors out with their food truck. There's a chance to win a $5 racing voucher. All you have to do is earn 5 points on any of the machines. And if you're new to horse racing at 1245 and 145 in our lower club, we're going to be offering a how to bet seminar, and you can put your name in a drawing to win a $20 voucher. So, last year we had about, I think, 3,000 people on track, which kind of made it seem like 20,000 when I was a kid at Bay Meadows and Golden Gate Field. So hopefully we can do it again.
Nice. I was going to ask if you were doing a barbecue, because that's kind of a typical racetrack thing on Memorial Day. That's great. So yeah, absolutely. People should put it on their agenda for tomorrow. As I say, nice, easy drive out there. Tony, before we get to Finger Lakes for tomorrow, I wanted to go back. I've been asking everybody, obviously, over the past few days as we've been talking, thoughts on last week's Preakness, National Treasure, Blazing Sevens, nice stretch duel. Mage just comes up short in the stretch. Part of that, obviously, was the pace scenario. But what were your thoughts after last week's Preakness?
Everything you just said. I thought it was a great horse race. No pace pressure put on National Treasure, so he had the advantage. Our local ex-top jockey, Jamie Rodriguez, where are you, buddy? You were supposed to apply some pressure to the Baffert horse, and then perhaps it could have worked out a little better. I think Castellano has a little bit of blame not taking advantage of Mage's break. And Blazing Sevens did everything he could. Chad is really turning into the Preakness guru. He has his horses ready to fire in that race, that's for sure. I was enjoyed with I found the race very enjoyable.
Yeah, I took a shot with Perform, and I just thought, those connections are so conservative, and he ran so well in the Tessio. It was just, that was a visually impressive race, and they put up the 150K. But I felt it could go either way given the numbers he had fired, and sure enough, and the pace didn't help Perform at all either. But I've also been asking people on that same topic, expecting horses to run big, and in the prep races and now in the first two races, and some of them have disappointed, and we've seen a series of different horses winning all year long. What are your thoughts at this point? We're 2 races deep in the Triple Crown on the 3-year-old scene so far, and I said yesterday, it has the feeling to me like these 3-year-olds might not define themselves really until the fall when they step up against older. That said, we still have the Belmont, we still have the Haskell, the Jim Dandy Travers Pennsylvania Derby. Somebody can step up, but it just seems like a class that is destined to be maybe a little bit ill-defined until the fall.
It seems that of late that seems to be a trend with the 3-year-olds. It seems like there's 2 seasons. Obviously, there's the season getting geared up for the Kentucky Derby with all the preps, and then the horses that run in the Derby and run up the track or maybe hit the board like an Angel of Empire. They back off them a little, then they're going to come back, and then they're going to make another rally. So I'm looking forward to the Belmont. I'm looking forward to Angel of Empire. So far, looking at the list of names, it looks like it could be a heck of a horse race, that's for sure. And all sorts of good things on Belmont Day. Fox taking over the telecast, the Tom Durkin coming out of retirement to call for the telecast. That's pretty exciting. So I'm still looking forward to this 3-year-old group. I'm big on Angel of Empire. I needed him for a boatload of money in the Derby, and I'm probably coming back with him in the Belmont.
I'm probably right with you there. I had him in the Derby. I thought he ran well in the Derby, but I
ran great in the Derby.
Yeah.
He ran great in the Derby. Unfortunately, it was just, I think, a matter of trips. Mage had a little bit better of an outside trip. Mage was able to get to the spot between the 5/16 and the quarter pole, or the 3/16, the 5/16 and the quarter pole. And Angel of Empire kind of had to lose just a tad of momentum and tip out. And I believe if you look at his stride at the wire, I think if he gets that cleaner trip right in that juncture of the race, he's the winner of the Kentucky Derby, in my opinion.
I have told people exactly the same thing. Mage and Angel of Empire kind of on the turn were pretty much next to each other, but Mage was closer to the outside and had to tip maybe a path and a half before he got going forward. And it looked to me like for 2 strides, Angel of Empire was waiting for the horses in front of him to open, and then Jock decided that's not going to happen. So now he has to go more like 2 or 3 paths to his outside. And I said exactly the same thing. Mage got the jump and opened up a little, and Angel of Empire was coming late. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
And we, Seth, we don't, as fans and watching it on TV and not knowing, never sitting on a racehorse, that's the difference between victory and defeat. Yeah. That little bit of momentum getting stalled. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. And it also, as
Seth,
you
you got a great eye. You're now my official backup. I might be called in sick tomorrow. You better venture down here. We want to hear Seth, and there they go out of the starting gate.
I don't know. I've probably mentioned this to you before. They don't do it anymore, but they used to do it down in Maryland, and I forget when. There was like a weekend there was one day every year where they'd invite to Laurel or Pimlico. I want to say it was Laurel. They would invite all the local media people, like the local NBC affiliate sports guy, to call a race. And it was hilarious because you could tell they had studied the night before. And the first call they made was spot on. They were great. And by the time it got to like the first turn, it was a mess. So yeah, I'm not sure I want to jump in and call any race. I tip my cap to you and your brethren on that side of things. All right.
With that said, Seth, I need to give a big shout out to Sean Dyer. He's a New Englander, and right now I'm not even his top 3 as favorite announcers. So I told him I'd give him the shout out.
Very good, very good. All right, let's set it up for tomorrow. Again, Memorial Day, and as we say, easy drive down the thruway, and if you want to come and stop by Chicken Barbecue and enjoy a day of the races, should be a lot of fun. But just set us up as we were talking off the air, pick 6 action out there, which got juggled up a little bit this year to a more traditional pick 6. Talk about that for tomorrow.
Seth, real quick. I kind of got on Perform a little bit with my friends. We were trying to find a wise guy horse, and I did not realize he had run a very good race in his maiden race against Mage. He was chasing him, and ever since then he kind of lost his forward position, and he's kind of been launching. But another angle that we have to take into consideration sometimes with these 3-year-olds is the ones that run well with the Lasix, and then they have to go to the Classics without it. I don't know if that's what faltered with Perform or if it was just the class level, but something to keep in mind going forward.
Yeah, and I will admit, as a handicapper, I have really been on the outside look. I'm not quite sure what to do with the whole LASIK situation, which I don't. Yeah. I get why they're doing it, but I don't think it's helping handicappers because it adds a real piece to the puzzle that is hard to plug in, certainly. But
it really is. It's another. The game's already tough enough as it is, and then they have to throw that at them.
Yeah, and also on that 3-year-old scene, I kind of alluded to it, but you say the Belmont's going to be great, but the Travers I think is shaping up for us here in the Saratoga area. That could help define things on the 3-year-old scene as well. All right, let's
without a doubt, looking good. All right, let's talk about this pick.
Yeah.
So we've got a $4,600 carryover, which is cool. Last week we had one over 13,000, and they put 30,000 new money into it. So perhaps if we can get through tomorrow, which I don't think we will, but then Tuesday, obviously, tomorrow is going to be tough for us to get a big pool with all the big tracks in there. But we've got the $4,600 carryover. The third race is interesting because it's a little more contentious than you would think. I think the morning line favorite is a little vulnerable because he only has 3 recorded workouts for his first start as an 8-year-old in the 2023 season, going 2 turns. And Anthony Ferraro has a good-looking entry, but English Laughter, even though he runs at Tampa, he just doesn't win much. He's only won a couple of races the last few years, and they've either been at Tampa or Presque Isle. And he's usually dressed up at a short price. The bottom horse I find very intriguing, Fire's Finale. His race 3 back against 75 N3Ls is good enough to win the race. Dylan's got an entry that I don't know what to do with. Feudal's a horse, a 10-year-old that has 13 wins. He's getting the blinkers off. He has a couple wins at the distance. He benefits from a race over the track. He's 5-1. I find him a little intriguing. And he ran against I Love Jackson and Town Jack. Both those horses are some grizzled veterans that are pretty good. Feudal in the first leg. Then we get Queen's Dancer, who I think looks like a pretty good single in race 2. The 5th race is a fairly wide open. I mean, Noda has a very good one called Barone Marchese that interesting that he protected him for his first start in 23 and a maiden 25. They win a nice $19,000 purse. Now they're going to come here for 11. Let's say they win and get claimed. They put in another 20. So they're up to near $40,000. They claimed them for 25 last year. So that they're getting close to getting out. So I think it's an aggressive and a proper placing for him. That's Barone Marchese in the fifth race. Devil or Angel is making his first start. I've always liked him. He's a Shackelford. And then you have Fighter Kite and Hangout, who both hooked up recently. Fighter Kite got the better of him, but eventually lost his position to the closers. Fighter Kite will benefit from a race under his belt, and he has a nice outside post. So now we get to the last three races, which we really want to talk about.
Yeah, and I will add Barone Marchese. If 4-1 is floating on the board, I'm jumping in on that no-to because I'm with you. I love when they come back for the waiver and they show we like this horse. We got some confidence in this horse, and then they get a win, and then they go up to the finger. That one's interesting. All right, 6th race tomorrow. Maiden specials going 6, a field of 7 scheduled to go. That includes the first-time starter, the number 1 scouting party. What are your thoughts in the 6th?
Sorry, I'm always backpedaling on you, Seth. You know, at first I was like, why did they protect him? And now they got him in for 11. But the more I thought about it, they wanted that big purse. Now they can send him here to Finger Lake, win and a claim, and Barone Marchese, and he's going to get a nice pace set up. And I also like the fact that they've given him ample time off after his first start. I think sometimes a lot of trainers, especially here at Finger Lakes, when horses are off the return, they are on the return, they seem to come back real quick for their second start. It's something I've never been a big fan of. I got to give this barn a little bit of credit for taking ample time, putting him in a very aggressive placing. And 4-1 seems pretty nice.
But you used a great word there, and it's worth noting that a little bit again. They protected the horse for 25. They come back for 11, and you have to look in the crystal ball a little bit. And I think you're exactly right. They're just being aggressive. They're saying, you know, we got some money in the bank on that win, and now let's go up and let's pick off another person. If somebody wants to take the horse, that just adds money to the pool. And I think I like the move.
And you know what, Seth? We have to be honest. I mean, I'm not a buyer guy, but he gets a 41 buyer, and he runs 6 furlongs in 116. Okay, and I know Aqueduct can play a little slow during the winter, but you have to come to a decision when you own a racehorse. Where's the upside?
Yeah.
Where's the downside? And you do not want to be the last guy holding the cards. So this is a very aggressive placing, and he gets a good pace scenario in the race also.
Yeah, very good. All right, 6th race. Your thoughts there?
All right, I think it's a 2-horse race, the 2 and the 7. I've been on She's an Arctic Queen. She's had a lot of chances. This is her 6th start in her career. It's her 3rd start at Finger Lakes. Her 4th start as a 3-year-old. I look at her times. You know, she goes 107-2 and gets beat nearly 5 lengths. I look at the outside girl, Golden Moonlight, who runs 5 furlongs in 59-1, and then she gets beat a length and a quarter. So we're going to call it 59-2. She can run a final furlong in almost 9 seconds, and she's quicker than the 2-horse. I really liked her debut run at Finger Lakes. It was her first start as a 3-year-old, her first start since early July in 22. And the Connections thought enough of her to run her at Gulfstream last summer in a nice $62,000 maiden special weight race, and she took some money. She was 8-1, just about 8-1 in a field of 9. I like what she saw. The filly that beat her, I think, is pretty good. She just finished 4th in a very, very nice allowance race here last week, which was won by Sandy's Garden, who I underestimated, who came back and looked very good winning. Both the runner-up and the 3rd-place finisher are a couple of gals that I think are very nice fillies here. So Golden Moonlight, and the thing I liked about her is she showed tenacity. She had every right to get discouraged between the top of the lane and the 8th pole when she lost a couple of lengths on Wartap, who was a loose leader. She said, you know what? I'm not going to get discouraged. I think I'm all right. Look who my sire of my mom is. It's Tiz Now. It's there within. Golden Moonlight showed a nice stride under the line. I think she's the horse to beat in race 6.
I like it. 7th race is the feature, the George Barker $50,000 purse, 3/4 of a mile. I have some rooting interest in here. I always like to root for the local owners, and that's Eddie F's Racing with Lobster shipping in, and there are a few shippers in here and some hometown heroes. Senbei, another one shipping in that looks interesting for Christophe Clement. But what are your thoughts on the Barker?
I thought the Barker, I like the field. We got big numbers. Hopefully we keep this field size intact, this could be a very nice one. Obviously, if Senbei can ever replicate the 2-year-old form, he's the horse to beat. I looked up his work tab on Equibase this morning. He has 11 recorded workouts for his first start as a 4-year-old. He did miss a work from the 6th of April to the 22nd. Not too bad. He only missed one out of the 11. Out of those workouts, he has 6 5-furlong workouts. Boy, it looks like he has been gelded for this one. He looks like he's ready to rock and roll. He's probably the horse to beat. Ladies Golden Guy is an exceptional sprinter. He doesn't get a lot of respect from probably outside of the Finger Lakes area. I believe he's only ever ventured away from here once, and that was in a turf dash at Saratoga last year in a pretty salty second state bred. Last year, he probably should have won the Barker. He missed some training from the 2nd of May to the 30th of May for some reasons I don't want to get into that was happening here on the racetrack. So I don't think we got to really see what was his best deal in the Barker last year. His comeback victory was sensational. I like the fact that they put a 6-furlong move in him. I believe he's the best local sprinter. Ladies Golden Guy, if you're going to try to beat Senbei. And you never know what's going to happen on the outside. Flying Emperor's a horse I've always been a fan of. He had all sorts of trouble on the 15th of May. They're bringing him back quick. He stumbled badly. He lost an iron. I don't really know what he got out of that affair. I know some of his best races are good enough to be competitive. And Disco Dino's another horse that every once in a while can step up and run a big race. But Senbei and Ladies Golden Guy, I'm looking for that stretch showdown at about the 8th pole.
Sounds good. And finally, a quick look at the 8th maiden specials going 3/4 of a mile. Fun way to wrap up the card.
Had a tough time with this race, to be honest. I thought the outside 2 had the advantage. I didn't know what to make of Aquilano's horse, who's the 2-1 morning line favorite. Obviously, if he can repeat that 7-furlong race at Laurel, that's going to put him somewhat in the mix, but he only has 1 recorded work for the comeback. So the outside 2 have a little bit more racing recency in their corner. I'm looking at the times. Wonderful Juanita is 4 1/4 off an 8 3. Tumbles is 5 1/4 off of 107 2 on the same day. I've been on Tumbles. I'm going to stay on Tumbles on the outside as my top pick in the nightcap.
I like it. So it looks like a fun Memorial Day into the 3-day week we're into now out at the Finger Lakes. So Monday leads into Tuesday and Wednesday as well. There's that pick 6 carryover if you want to drive out, T-shirt giveaway, chicken barbecue. Sounds like a fun day. I'm thinking about, well, I got to be in here. I got to do TV tomorrow on the holiday, but otherwise I might make the drive out. Tony, as always,
we got to get you out here. We haven't had you out here. Last time I saw you out here was with you and Brian Nade. You know, that one time that was cool having the live telecast.
No, and to be honest, there's some whispers of New York Derby. We might make the return. We're
look out! All right, awesome. Yeah.
Looking forward.
Bring Steve with you also. That'd be a lot of fun too.
Will do. All right, Tony. Again, appreciate the visit. We will talk again next week.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Appreciate it. Tony Calo from the Finger Lakes with a little preview of some of the Monday action, and we'll preview Monday action out on the West Coast right after this. We'll be joined by John White from Santa Anita. 3 Grade 1s on the card tomorrow. Stay tuned.
What if there was a way to become a better horse player, to have a better knowledge of the game, to be more successful? What if there were a way to take what you've learned, what you know, and make better decisions, better choices? In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
No matter where in the world you are, the excitement of wagering on horse racing is just a click away. You'll get live streaming, past performances, race replays, our virtual tote board, analysis and selections from professional handicappers, a simple, safe, and secure wagering platform, and best of all, you get track prices. CapitalOTBBet.com. Bet any place, anytime at CapitalOTBBet.com. And be sure to download our new mobile app from the iTunes Store or Google Play.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, Scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. As promised before the break, big day at Santa Anita tomorrow, 3 Grade 1. So I thought we'd preview that, and who better to preview some of the action at Santa Anita with than our friend John White. John, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. How's it going?
Very good. Happy to have you on board. Before we get, and I'm going to get to the Santa Anita races in a few, and I'm going to have some other conversation first. But before I forget, what's your weather look like out there tomorrow?
Looks very nice. So unlike that rainy winter that we experienced, and in fact, it's very pleasant because it's not too hot, and it's just very nice, and we should be fast and firm.
Yeah, I got a couple of nephews. I think I've told you, who live out in the LA area now, and they've been talking about the nice weather recently, so that's great for the holiday weekend, certainly. And as I alluded to, we'll talk Santa Anita specifically tomorrow in a few, but always if I have you on a date like this, and I've been doing it for the last 2 weeks with everybody I've talked to, want to get your thoughts on the Triple Crown so far. Derby with Mage. Looking at your picks and the Derby strike list and whatnot, I think you were similar to me. Mage was so lightly raced, I just could not pull the trigger on Mage. I had Angel of Empire. I thought he ran well. Certainly Two Phils ran huge in the Derby. So love some thoughts on Mage in the Derby. And then last week, National Treasure, Blazing Sevens in the Preakness. Your thoughts on the first two legs so far?
Well, I thought that Mage ran a fantastic race considering his lack of experience.
Yeah.
And he got a great ride, and I was so tickled for his rider to finally get that Kentucky Derby monkey off his back, Javier Castellano. But I thought the Two Phils ran the best race of anybody in the Kentucky Derby. For him to finish as close as he did in being the runner-up, being that close to such a hot pace, which practically no one expected the pace to be that fast after the absolutely just suicidal pace of last year, but it was fast again this year. And the horses that were close to that pace, my top pick, Kings Barnes, I don't know what the thinking was there, because he certainly melted down, and not surprisingly, but that's where I say Two Phils I thought ran the best race. I would have liked him back in the Preakness. I went with Mage in the Preakness. I bet Mage heavily in the Preakness. At the top of the stretch, I would have doubled my bet on Mage because he was sitting right there. He broke beautifully. He was sitting in contention all the way to the top of the stretch, and then he just didn't have a kick when the real test came. And credit to National Treasure and Blazing Sevens, but the pace was slow, and that really helped National Treasure. And for Bob Baffert, he gets yet another Triple Crown race victory. And for Baffert, that's number 17. That's the all-time record for a Triple Crown race victory. And second is Dwayne Lucas, and he's got 14. So Baffert's won 3 more Triple Crown races than anybody in history. And third is Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons with 13. So yet another victory in a Triple Crown race for Hall of Famer Bob Baffert.
And reading your online column, and I tell people to go look up John's columns or follow him on Twitter, because you always link to your latest column, and they're always very interesting. But you noted what I had noted. We had talked about it when the odds from Friday, the early odds on the Preakness came out on our handicapping show last Saturday. My co-host and I were talking about it. And as the day progressed, I was looking. The Preakness odds were about as strange as you could come up with, particularly when you looked at the Black Eyed Susan Preakness double or some of the other horizontals on the day, which were far more realistic. But the win odds were just totally askew in that race.
Well, I thought the odds were very odd. And, Chase the Chaos, who finished 5th, and Coffee with Chris, who finished 7th, they were 10-1 each. Chase the Chaos was 50-1 on the original morning line of Keith Hustel, and Coffee with Chris was 20-1, and I think those were more realistic prices. I have to be honest, Seth, I would have been willing to be booking action on Chase the Chaos at 10-1 or Coffee with Chris at 10-1. I mean, those were just tremendously deflated prices on those two horses. And it helped me get a decent price, I felt, on Mage, considering he was the Kentucky Derby winner. But it shows you it doesn't matter if you get a good price if your horse doesn't win. So you can get a nice price, and they talk about value. All that I hear is that word every single day, time and time again, and by horse racing analysts. Well, value doesn't mean squat if you're not cashing your ticket.
Yeah, if the ticket's on the floor, it has zero value. But I was with you when I looked up and saw Mays, and your column noted really late in the betting, he was 2-1. And I thought, this is a crazy price on this horse. And the horses that should have been, it was very funny last week, certainly. Another question I've asked people over the past couple of weeks, and particularly now since the Preakness is in the books as well. Give me your thoughts on the 3-year-olds overall, because I said it earlier, I've said it the last few days. It seems to me like it may be one of those 3-year-old crops that we won't know really. They won't define themselves until they face the older horses later this year. Now, there's still the 3-year-old races this summer, Belmont still to come up, Haskell, Travers, etc. So somebody could step to the forefront. But for me, so far, the class is a little bit ill-defined. Your thoughts on the 3-year-olds?
I think you put it perfectly, Seth. I would say it's definitely ill-defined. It's wide open. However, I will say that the results of the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness both flattered Forte.
Yeah.
So I think Forte is a key maybe to how good this crop is, because I was all against Forte at the Kentucky Derby. I didn't like the declining Beyer speed figures going into the race. And yet Bage wins the Kentucky Derby. Well, he had lost twice to Forte in Florida. And then you get National Treasure winning the Preakness. Well, in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, National Treasure was no match for Forte. So at this point, I'm a participant in the NTRA weekly poll, and I had not been voting for Forte at number 1. But considering the results of the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, in the most recent voting, I put Forte at the top of the list, because he didn't run in the Kentucky Derby because of the foot problem, and then that put him on the vets list, so he was precluded from running in the Preakness. But his form was really bolstered by the results of the first 2 legs of this year's Triple Crown.
Yeah, and I talked about the poll on yesterday's show, and I found it very interesting that Mage has a 2-point edge on Forte. Number 1 and number 2, 296 to 294 as far as the points. But Forte had more first place votes, which I found very interesting. And I'll also note, because you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier in the conversation about Baffert, he now may have, and you wrote about it in your column as well, he may have an interesting 3-year-old to watch as the year progresses, because the Sir Barton winner, Arabian Lion, had a better buyer, had a triple-digit buyer last Saturday, which was better than the winner of the Preakness. So Arabian Lion may be a 3-year-old to watch going forward.
Well, and it's a sign that this year's Preakness was not exactly a vintage renewal in terms of the Beyer speed figures, because the winner gets a 98, National Treasure. That's the second lowest since the Beyers were first published in 1991 for a Preakness stakes. Justifies 97 was the only lower one. So it really shows you that this is a wide open situation. And as you say, Arabian Lion, this is one of the quirkiest form reversals I've seen at the major level in a long time. Arabian Lion looked like a star when he won his career debut, ran a big race in defeat second time out, and then ran 2 absolute stinkers. And then he ran a good race in the Lexington, but he lost. So he had a 4-race losing streak, and then all of a sudden he puts it all together on the Preakness undercard and runs a triple-digit buyer. And he not only was impressive from a buyer standpoint, but he was visually impressive to me. I mean, that was the Arabian Lion we've been waiting for.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I said that to people this past week too, as we were talking about the day. I said that horse is just it's been a funny career so far, but it seems like it may be moving back in the right direction after the early promise. All right, John, let's jump in again. Big day tomorrow, Memorial Day, the holiday. Big day at Santa Anita with 3 Grade 1s. Let's touch on those. The 5th race tomorrow afternoon at Santa Anita is the Game League Grade 1 event, $400,000 for the ladies going a mile and an eighth on the grass. I had a 3, 6, and 7 Queen Goddess over a Quattrell and Macadamia in the 3rd spot. We're going to pull up the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mayor Turf from January 28th, and it will be number 6, Queen Goddess getting it done that day. Subsequently, she ran 6th in the Jenny Wiley at Keeneland, but Luis Saez going out tomorrow for the ride, and given what we saw as we're watching now this Pegasus race, I went back to her. But what are your thoughts on the Game League?
Well, I made Queen Goddess the 9-5 morning line favorite. I think she is clearly the one to beat, and I think she'll be bet into favoritism in the race. She cost over $1 million at public auction, and I won't hold the Jenny Wiley against her too much. I mean, that's tough to ship to Keeneland, and that's one of the tougher filly and mare grass races we have in the country typically each year. So that's no disgrace for her. She was in contention all the way to the top of the stretch in that race, and this is certainly, I think, a more winnable spot for her. And Quattrell really loves the Santa Anita turf course. You have to respect her. A real interesting entrant in the race is Via Reggio for trainer Brendan Walsh, because Walsh won this race last year, and he did so with Ocean Road. And really, this filly, Via Reggio, is coming into this race, I think, with slightly better form than Ocean Road did last year. Last year, Ocean Road came into the Game League off a win in the first level allowance race at Keeneland, whereas Via Reggio is coming into this race off a win in a third level allowance race at Keeneland, and Via Reggio got an 87 buyer at Keeneland, whereas Ocean Road had gotten an 85 buyer at Keeneland. So I think you really have to take this Ocean Road very, very seriously, especially in terms of the success that Brendan Walsh has had coming out to Southern California in recent years. So that's a very interesting runner. I did want to mention briefly, we're talking about the Game League Stakes. Well, Game League, the filly, she was something special, and it's neat that we honor our stars of the past with races named after them. Game League was by Bold Ruler, of course, the sire of the great Secretariat. And Game League did not race as a 2-year-old, mainly because of her big size. She was very large. But at racing as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and 5-year-old, she ran 41 times during those 3 years. And she carried big weights, like she won a race at Saratoga under 132 pounds. She beat the boys on more than one occasion, and maybe the best race of her entire career was when she finished second to the absolute phenomenal Dr. Fager in the 1968 Californian at Hollywood Park. And while going down memory lane with Game League, I just also want to mention, Seth, that today is a monumental memory day for me in horse racing, because it was on this day 51 years ago, 1972 at Longacres. I was standing next to my father next to the winner's circle, and I made the first $100 bet of my entire life, and it was on a filly by the name of Turn to Fire. And Turn to Fire looked like she was not going to fire in that race, and I thought I was doomed with my first $100 bet. And Turn to Fire under Larry Pierce, whose brother Don Pierce was a top rider in Southern California. Turn to Fire came on very similar to Personal Ensign when she got up and edged Winning Colors, and Turn to Fire got up in the last jump to win by a nose. And that's a memory that will live with me forever.
That's hilarious. That's great. I mean, that is the story of horse players in a nutshell. That, 51 years later, you remember the $100 bet and the jock and the race, and that, because I have some of those stories myself. Sort of mine are kind of related to Forgo, who pulled me into the game, making the late runs of it. That's great. But speaking of history of the game, you're a great guy to ask this, and I had it written down on my rundown, and I almost forgot about it. But when you mentioned all the starts for Gamely, it got me over to my rundown here. And I've asked a number of people this over the past 3 weeks since the Kentucky Derby. Immediately after the Derby, and as that we were looking to who's going to go on to the Preakness, social media has been alive with let's change the Triple Crown schedule. And I have said I could go either way. I used to be a traditionalist. Now I can see the argument the other way to stretch it out a little bit. But as I've talked to other people over the past few weeks, it's a multi-layered thing, though. You also have to get the tracks to buy into it as much as the horsemen and whatnot. But again, you're a guy who is very well-versed in the history of the game and the tradition of the game. What are your thoughts on the Triple Crown schedule?
Well, I'm adamantly against changing it. I have been all along, and I am not changing my opinion on that. I'm with Stephen Christ, who feels that it should not be tinkered with. Look, this is one of the biggest things we have in the sport. It's the most coveted achievement. And a great example of why I don't think we should change it is, look, when Authentic was running and we had the Triple Crown changed to the fall, the Belmont, they changed the order. The races were run at different dates than they normally are. If we'd had a Triple Crown winner that year, there's no way that people would give that horse the same kind of credit that we give Justify, that we give American Pharoah, that we give Secretariat, Seattle Slew, and Affirmed. Look, I know that the Triple Crown races have had variations all the way through their history, but basically it has not been changed other than the COVID year in 1969. And I think it's so key for our game. Plus, if you start lengthening the time between races, it's a different animal. And we really want to keep the fact that if you achieve this feat, which is so difficult, 3 races within 5 weeks at 3 different distances at 3 different tracks. I mean, the difficulty of it is what makes it so special and so coveted. So, I get why people think that it would be better to change it, but I just am not in that camp. And mainly because if we do change it, any horse that would win it would be considered an asterisk situation. The people would just not consider it to be a sort of a legitimate Triple Crown winner.
Yeah, as I say, I could go either way, and I see legitimate arguments on both sides. I'm just curious also, as I say, you got to get the Maryland Jockey Club to buy into it. Is this gonna work for them? Moving it later, does it work for Naira? So it's just it's interesting, and it's interesting to hear the different opinions I've heard over the past 2 or 3 weeks. But
there was the 37-year drought. And listen, I was alive not for the entire 25-year drought from Citation to Secretariat, but I lived through a lot of that. And by the time they got to Secretariat, there was a feeling that the crop sizes were too big and we'll never have a Triple Crown and it should be changed. And then boom, we get Secretariat. Boom, we get Seattle Slew. Boom, we get Affirmed. And in my opinion, we should have had Spectacular Bid in there too. But then we get a 37-year drought. And by the time we got to American Pharoah in 2015, there was such a strong thinking of changing the Triple Crown that I felt that American Pharoah basically saved the Triple Crown by winning it in 2015. And the thing is that if we get a Triple Crown winner, it just won't be the same. And I thought after the COVID year, because we did change the Triple Crown in 2019, it was a situation in which, I thought maybe coming out of that was the time that they might tinker with it. They might change it. But, to me, fortunately, and I should say 2020, the year of COVID, when they changed the Triple Crown. But I thought maybe in 2021 they would put more time between the races. Whatever. I was happy that the people at Churchill Downs, Pimlico, and Belmont Park said, we're going back to the traditional Triple Crown. And like I say, I'm in that camp.
Yeah, and I was listening to a podcast this week where they were speculating, is there enough momentum that it'll change by next year? I don't think there's any shot of that happening, but the discussion continues. All right, let's jump back into the stakes action for Monday, the Shoemaker Mile, Grade 1 event. $500,000 up for grabs with the mile trip. I have a 2, 8, 1, and 7. I put Hong Kong Harry on top. I will note Gold Phoenix, Kimura comes back in to ride, been on this horse over the winter, coming back from Canada, Woodbine, where he's back riding very, very well. So clearly getting invited back for the stakes race on Memorial Day indicates he made a little noise out there this winter, and that's interesting to see. But again, I put Hong Kong Harry on top. I went back to last year, the American. This is June 19th of last year, but same track, same trip. Santa Anita at a mile, and Hong Kong Harry is going to be the number 2 horse here and get it done in our replay. So I tilted in that direction. I thought Cabo Spirit at 15-1 was maybe a little bit intriguing as a play coming out of the 4th in the Maker's Mile. But what are your thoughts on the Shoemaker?
Well, the thoughts are that this race gave me an absolute migraine from a morning line standpoint, because you go up and down the line here, and I had to make big prices on good horses, which it's very similar to the Breeders' Cup, which I'll be making the morning line for the 8th time this year when it's held at Santa Anita. And boy, this is a tremendous betting race. I mean, just fantastic, really. And I went with Hong Kong Harry as the slight morning line favorite, but Gold Phoenix could go favorite. It wouldn't shock me if Exalted or Balmont went favorite, or maybe, I mean, and I don't think you can really slight de jure. This horse fits right there with everybody. And there's a newcomer that's causing a buzz by the way he's training in the morning, and that's Salesman. He drew bad. He drew post 11, the outside post in the field of 11, but it's Richard Mandela, and we know what Mandela's capable of doing with a foreign runner. And this is just really, this is a fun race. You mentioned Cabo Spirit. I mean, I hated making him 15-1, and he may go lower than that. I don't know, but this is just a really, really tough race. That Hong Kong Harry is such a neat horse, and he's kind of got a following now with the fact that he just is this little mighty, sort of like a male version of Megahertz, although he doesn't drop as far back early in his races as Megahertz did. But the fact that he's little and has this strong stretch kick usually, and so you get Flavian Pratt there, and he's pretty reliable. He's consistent. Gold Phoenix deserves tremendous respect in this race, too. Of course, he won the big race here earlier in the meet in terms of getting the victory in the Charles Whittingham. So, I should say the Kilroe Mile. We have the Kilroe Mile and then the Shoemaker Mile are kind of the 2 big mile turf races we have at Santa Anita during the first part of the year. Gold Phoenix, they stretched him out, and he ran kind of flat in the Whittingham, but I think he could bounce back. He's been working well in the morning. You always got to look at anything that Phil D'Amato sends out on the turf. This guy's turned into an absolute, just outstanding turf trainer. He's a really good trainer, period, but he's particularly powerful on the turf. And I remember when he was assistant for many years to Mike Mitchell. Mike Mitchell was very successful at claiming horses and then winning turf marathons with the horse. So Mike Mitchell was a very good turf trainer in his own right. So a wide open race here, and it honors Bill Shoemaker. So here again, we're honoring one of our greats from the past. And Seth, you mentioned Forgo, and I remember talking to Bill Shoemaker about riding Forgo. And particularly in that unbelievable Barbaro Cup of 1976, when Forgo was packing 135 pounds, and he had to try to catch a really top horse in Honest Pleasure that day. If you go back to YouTube and watch that race, and you look at the top of the stretch, you would bet the house on Honest Pleasure. Honest Pleasure was good enough that he set the track record in the Travers Stakes as a 3-year-old, a record that stood until Arrogate broke it. So, and Shoemaker told me, he says, I really didn't think we were going to get up that day with Forgo, but he did. Shoemaker also rode Silky Sullivan in the 6.5 furlong allowance race at Santa Anita in the 1950s, in which Silky Sullivan was 41 lengths behind, going 6.5 furlongs. And Shoemaker, I said, boy, what do you remember about that race? And he said, I was so far behind early, I didn't think I'd hit the board, let alone win. And I remember talking to Shoemaker's agent, Harry Silbert. I said, what do you remember about that victory with Bill Shoemaker and Silky Sullivan when they won going 6.5 furlongs? And he said, I was sitting next to the trainer, Reggie Cornell, in the box seats. And Cornell, we both had our binoculars on Silky Sullivan, and they come out of the gate going 6.5 furlongs. And just before you know it, Silky Sullivan's more than a 16th of a mile behind. And he says, Reggie Cornell, without putting down his binoculars, just commented, I told this kid not to rush the horse, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah, Forgo, one of my all-time favorite, got me into the game. And while you were talking, I pulled up the New York Times article online of that Marlboro Cup, because that's one of my all-time favorite races. And yeah, I would advise people to go look it up. But I was curious. You mentioned the 137 Forgo, Honest Pleasure with 119. Forgo was giving, I just saw it in the article. He was giving up weight from up to 28 pounds, I think, in there. 137. I mean, you think about that today. 137 in today's racing, that's mind-boggling that the horse carried it, gave away that much weight. And the article says there was 30 pounds of weights in the saddle to get up to that total.
Well, let me tell you the thing that I appreciated the most that Shoemaker told me about reminiscing about that race is he said, when I came back to be unset, to the winner's circle, the crowd was going crazy. And he says, Frank Whiteley walked over to me and he said, his first comment was, congratulations, Shu. And then he said, Shu, when you go to the scale, really play it up at how heavy your saddle is, because we're already at 137, and we want to try to keep the weight off as much as we can. So really play it off. And Shoemaker told me, Mr. Whiteley, I'm not going to have to play it off. It is going to be that tough for me to go to the scale with that saddle.
Yeah, I'm looking at the article here. He was giving away from 18 to 28 pounds, a 28-pound gap, just mind-boggling. But I would advise people, don't just look up that race. You can look up all of Forgo's races. Just a phenomenal career. All right, John, let's finally take a look at the Gold Cup tomorrow at Santa Anita. Grade 1 event, $400,000, mile and a quarter. Field of 6 scheduled. I pulled up the obvious race, the Californian. That was back towards the end of April. It will be defunded, winning a 102 buyer figure. He'll be the number 1 horse here. Country Grammar for Bob Baffert won this race a couple of years ago and has certainly had a phenomenal career. I mean, you look up at the money won. How often do you see that? How often do you see 8 figures? Over $14 million in the bank for Country Grammar. Senior Buscador is a little bit interesting to me, mainly because of his trainer, Todd Fincher, who, if folks follow racing, down in the Southwest, they're familiar with him. But I think he's starting to branch out a little more and maybe becoming a little more well-known to folks around the country. But what are your thoughts on the Gold Cup?
Well, the Gold Cup, this will be the 85th Hollywood Gold Cup, and I'm glad that they went back to the Hollywood Gold Cup name because this is a prestigious race nationally. It's steeped in history. The legendary Seabiscuit won the inaugural renewal at Hollywood Park in 1938. And you mentioned Country Grammar's earnings of $14.8 million. The all-time leader in North American earnings, this means that you've needed to have made one start in the United States or Canada, is Arrogate, $17.4 million. Then it's Thunder Snow, $16.5 million, which kind of always irritates me because I bet $1,000 to win on Thunder Snow in the Kentucky Derby at odds of 16 to 1, and they come out of the gate and he starts bucking like the bucking bronco, and so that was $1,000 right down the drain before you could say his name practically, and he would go on to win 2 Dubai World Cups. Number 3 is Mishriff at $16 million. Gunrunner is fourth at 15.9, and then Country Grammar, he is fifth all time in North American earnings at 14.8 million. And that set means that Baffert has trained two of the top five North American leading money earners. Baffert's most known for winning Triple Crown races, as we talked about earlier. But here he's trained two of the top five earners of all time in North America. But that being said, I think the Funded is the one to beat in the Hollywood Gold Cup. He handled Country Grammar in the Grade 1 Awesome again last fall at Santa Anita. Country Grammar's returning from the Middle East, coming off one of his worst performances in the Dubai World Cup. You have to respect Country Grammar off his class and his earnings and so forth, but the Funded is the now horse. You mentioned the triple-digit buyer he got in the Californian, but more than that, he showed a new dimension. He'd never rallied from far back like that. He broke poorly that day and was dead last early and still rallied and won. Now, this is a tougher race. There's no question about it. But that still was a big step forward in terms of winning from off the pace like the Funded did last time. This is a race he really should win. I think he'll be bet heavily. I made him the 4-5 morning line favorite. I made Country Grammar the second choice. Pretty strong support there at 8-5. At Senior Buscador, I debated 4-1, 9-2, 5-1, settled on 5-1. And I'm with you. This is a trainer I have a lot of respect for, Todd Fincher, and he's doing well. When he ships to Kentucky or when he comes to California, based, as you say, in New Mexico. But this is, and Oaklawn, he's done well at Oaklawn too. So this is a very good trainer. But I think this is a race that Bob Baffert should win, either with the Funded or, if not the Funded, Country Grammar. And if Baffert does win this, he'll make history because he'll break the tie with the late, great Charlie Whittingham for the most Hollywood Gold Cup wins. Right now, they are tied with 7, and this would be Baffert's 8th Gold Cup. So Baffert most likely is going to make history once again today, on Monday, I should say, I think. And Baffert's won this race. He won it the first time with Real Quiet 1999, and then with Congaree, First Dude. He won it twice with Game On Dude, then also Cupid and Improbable most recently, as you mentioned, with Country Grammar a couple of years ago. So I think it's all about Baffert in this year's Hollywood Gold Cup.
Yeah, I agree. It goes through the two Baffert horses, no question about it. But nice Memorial Day planned for tomorrow out in Southern California with 3 Grade 1 events. And again, a lot of history behind those races as well. John, always appreciate the conversation. It's always a lot of fun, informative, entertaining, and appreciate you taking the time this morning. I know it's very early out there in Southern California, but thanks for joining us. Good luck to you and everybody over the weekend and tomorrow out at Santa Anita, and we will talk again.
Thanks a lot, Seth. Always great to talk with you. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Let's also remember what Memorial Day is all about, honoring those that have paid the price for serving our country. So that's something that we can never, emphasize enough of what the true meaning of Memorial Day is.
Totally agree. Appreciate your bringing that up as well. John, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Seth.
John White, morning line odds maker out at Santa Anita, giving us some thoughts on the 3 nice Grade 1 stakes tomorrow at Santa Anita. A little bit earlier, Tony Calo. And again, Tony comes on Sundays and previews Monday action. And Monday tomorrow is Memorial Day. And as Tony said, T-shirt giveaway out there, chicken barbecue. You can win some vouchers to play during the afternoon. So it is an easy drive. And again, we've done some live broadcasts from Finger Lakes. You go out on the thruway, and really once you get off the thruway, it's a pretty easy drive right over the Finger Lakes. So if you'd like to enjoy a little live racing tomorrow, keep Finger Lakes in mind. Otherwise, we will wrap things up for this Sunday morning on Racing Across America. Seth Merrow in the studio. Appreciate it. We'll be back again about an hour and a half or so. Typically, we kick off, 12:30-ish for our look at Sunday afternoon racing, and that'll be the case again today. I will also note that I'll be in tomorrow because with the big schedule of racing across the country, it is worth jumping in and doing an OTB live tomorrow on Memorial Day. They'll be racing in New York. They have a New York bred program day tomorrow down at Belmont, the big day at Santa Anita, and some of the other tracks also plugged in on a Monday, Memorial Day. So we'll be back in tomorrow afternoon for OTB Live as well. But in the meantime, we're back this afternoon for OTB Live, looking at a little New York, little Churchill. Probably pull in some Saratoga harness as well. Always like to take a look at the sulky side of things on Sunday afternoon. So that'll probably be the game plan as well for this afternoon. Otherwise, again, we'll wrap things up. Oh, I do want to remind you as well, tomorrow we have a promotion here at the Clubhouse Racebook. There is a $100 knockout challenge. So you can come down here, enjoy the great Memorial Day holiday racing from across the country. Maybe grab a little lunch at Ferdella's, enjoy racing with some of your friends or make new friends down here. But also, you get a chance at a little extra something with the $100 knockout challenge right here, Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. All right, Seth Merrow, Sunday morning, Racing Across America. Really appreciate your tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the day, and don't forget, back in about an hour and a half or so for OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon. We'll see you then. We would like to thank Woodbine for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Woodbine's 2023 Thoroughbred Stakes program has more than $17 million in purses, including 39 graded stakes, 5 Grade 1 events, and 2 $1 million classics, the King's Plate and the Woodbine Mile. Woodbine, now through December, great racing north of the border.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.